Listen closely, my friends. You are going to die. Not someday, not eventually. Actually, sooner than you think. And if you're honest with yourself, really honest, you already know this. You've known it for years, and yet you've spent the majority of your waking hours arguing with traffic, refreshing your phone, replaying conversations that no longer matter, avoiding the hard things, chasing things that were never yours to chase. And the worst part? You did all of it while fully believing you had time. There was a man, Roman emperor, ruler of the known world, commander of the greatest military force civilization had ever produced. He had every luxury, every pleasure, every distraction available to him. And every night he sat alone and wrote to himself, not about conquest, not about power, not about the empire he controlled. He wrote about how to be a better man, how to think more clearly, how to stop wasting the hours he had been given. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and the philosophy he practiced was called Stoicism. It was not invented for emperors. It was not built for the comfortable. It was forged in the minds of slaves, soldiers, and men who had lost everything and still chose to stand. What you are about to hear is not motivation. Motivation fades by Tuesday. What you are about to receive is something far older, far sharper, and far more dangerous to your comfortable mediocrity. These are 10 Stoic principles, not repackaged quotes, not feel-good affirmations, but actual weapons of the mind. Tools that, when you understand them fully, when they sink past the surface and reach the place where you actually make decisions, will change the way you move through the world forever. Don't skip, don't rush, because the moment you almost skip is probably the moment that was made for you. Lesson 1. The dichotomy that most people never learn. In 168 BC, the Roman Republic sent an ambassador to a Seleucid king named Antiochus IV. This king had invaded Egypt and was on the verge of conquering it. The ambassador, a man named Gaius Popilius Laenas, arrived alone, no army, no weapons, and handed Antiochus a scroll demanding he leave Egypt. When the king said he needed time to think, Laenas did something that became legendary in the ancient world. He drew a circle in the sand around the king's feet, and he said, "Give me your answer before you step out of this circle." Antiochus, a man with an army at his back, withdrew from Egypt. Laenas had no power over what the king would decide. He had no control over whether Egypt would fall or survive. What he controlled was singular, his own clarity, his own courage, and his own action in that moment. And that was enough to shift the entire geopolitical reality of the ancient Mediterranean. This is the first and most foundational principle of Stoicism, what Epictetus called the dichotomy of control. He wrote it plainly in the Enchiridion: some things are within our power, and some things are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and everything that is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our reputation, the actions of others, and everything not of our own doing. This sounds simple. It is not. Epictetus was not a senator. He was not a philosopher in a comfortable school. He was a slave. He was legally owned by another man. His freedom of movement, his ability to leave, his body itself, none of it was his. And yet he developed a philosophy of absolute inner sovereignty, because he understood something most free men never grasp. The cage that truly imprisons you is not built from iron. It is built from the belief that your peace depends on what happens outside you. Think about what you spent your mental energy on this week. Someone who didn't respond the way you hoped, a result you couldn't control, an opinion someone else formed about you, a situation that went sideways despite your best effort. How much of your focus, your actual cognitive and emotional bandwidth, poured into things that were never yours to control in the first place? The Stoics are not telling you to be passive. Laenas was not passive. He acted with total force. but he directed that force only where it could land. He did not exhaust himself trying to control what the king would feel or think or remember. He controlled his own position, his own clarity, his own courage, and then he let reality do what it would. This principle demands something uncomfortable, that you stop using uncontrollable things as the explanation for your suffering. The economy is not the reason your life is small. The behavior of other people is not the reason you are unhappy. The situation is not the reason you cannot move. These things are real obstacles, but the Stoics insist that your response to them is always yours. Fully, completely, irrevocably yours. Draw the circle. Everything inside it is yours. Everything outside, let it be. Lesson 2. The obstacle is the only way forward. In 1914, Thomas Edison's laboratory caught fire. Decades of work, prototypes, notebooks, research, irreplaceable records burned to the ground. Edison was 67 years old. His son Charles watched in horror as his father stood at the edge of the fire, watching it consume everything. Edison turned to his son and said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, he began rebuilding. There is a line in the private journals of Marcus Aurelius that has survived 2,000 years because it is simply ruthlessly true. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not optimism. This is not positive thinking. Positive thinking is soft. It says, look on the bright side. The Stoic principle is harder and sharper than that. It says, the obstacle itself is the mechanism of your advancement. Not despite the obstacle, through it, because of it. The obstacle is the path. Consider what this actually means for your life. Every setback you have experienced was also a diagnostic. It told you something real about your system, your thinking, your assumptions, your approach. Every rejection carries within it a specification of what was missing. Every failure is data that agreement would never give you. In ancient Sparta, young men in the agoge, the brutal military training program, were deliberately undernourished, not as cruelty, but as education. They were sent to steal food to survive. If they were caught, they were not punished for stealing. They were punished for being caught. The hardship was not incidental to the training. The hardship was the training. Weakness had to be found and broken before battle found it instead. The modern world has made the profound mistake of treating comfort as the goal, and so entire generations have optimized for the removal of friction, and in doing so, they have optimized themselves out of the very experiences that would have made them capable. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." The obstacle in front of you right now, whatever it is not evidence that you are in the wrong place. It is evidence that something real is being demanded of you. The question the Stoics ask is not, how do I get around this? The question is, what is this obstacle asking me to become? Edison did not mourn the fire. He studied it, and within 3 weeks he had a new phonograph. The obstacle had clarified his thinking in a way that undisturbed success never could. Lesson 3. Your mind is not your ally until you train it. In 49 BC, Julius Caesar stood at the bank of the Rubicon River in northern Italy. Roman law was absolute. No general could cross the Rubicon with his army. To do so was to declare war on the Republic itself. His officers were afraid. His political enemies were waiting. His own advisors urged caution. Caesar sat with the weight of that decision. He could feel the fear. He could hear every voice telling him to turn back. And then he crossed. What made that moment possible was not the absence of fear. It was the presence of something that could govern fear. The Stoics understood something that modern neuroscience is only now beginning to confirm. The untrained mind is not a neutral instrument. It is a machine optimized for threat detection, for social comparison, for the amplification of negative experience. Left unmanaged, it will destroy you slowly with 1,000 small anxieties that never once correspond to actual danger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But here is what people miss when they read that line. He was not stating a fact. He was writing a reminder to himself, because he too struggled. He too had mornings where the bed felt easier than the throne. He wrote in his journal, "Resist the temptation of going back to sleep." He was a man in active combat with the gravitational pull of his own comfort. The discipline of the Stoic mind operates on a specific principle. Impressions, the automatic interpretation your mind places on events, are not the same as reality. When you receive bad news, your mind generates an impression. This is catastrophic. When someone criticizes you, your mind generates an impression. I am inadequate. When a plan fails, your mind generates an impression. I am defeated. The Stoic practice is to pause between the impression and the response, to hold the impression up and examine it, to ask, is this true? Or is this simply what my undisciplined mind does with discomfort? The ancient Stoics called this faculty the hegemonikon, the ruling part of the mind, the part that can observe thought without being enslaved by it, the part that can look at fear and ask, what are you exactly? Where do you come from? Are you useful? In 1944, Viktor Frankl was imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp. Every external thing had been stripped from him: family, freedom, identity, possessions. And in that place, he discovered the last human freedom, the ability to choose one's response to circumstances. He wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies your power. The untrained mind fills that space immediately with reaction. The trained mind stands in that space deliberately. Every meditation practice, every moment of self-reflection, every conscious pause before responding. These are not soft habits. They are military drills for the ruling faculty of your mind, because the mind that is not trained will eventually be trained by whatever is loudest, most urgent, most stimulating around it. And in the modern world, what is loudest and most stimulating is almost never what is good for you. Train the mind, or accept that something else will. Lesson 4. The voluntary hard thing. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He was advisor to emperors. He owned multiple estates. He was surrounded by every comfort the ancient world could produce, and once a month he deliberately stripped it all away. He wrote about this practice, voluntarily eating the food of the poor, sleeping on a thin mat, wearing simple, rough clothing, not as punishment, but as preparation. He wanted to know, in his own body, the answer to a question most people are too afraid to ask: if the worst happens, can I bear it? He found that the answer was yes, and that answer gave him something no amount of wealth could purchase: the freedom from the fear of losing it. This is the Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood and underutilized principle in the entire philosophy. Modern self-help has become obsessed with optimization, with efficiency, with removing every source of friction from the path to achievement. But the Stoics knew something that optimization culture has completely forgotten. The capacity to endure discomfort is not a side effect of building character. It is the mechanism of it. In the early days of American naval aviation, pilots who were training on aircraft carriers, some of the most dangerous environments in military history, were deliberately put through situations they could not control: equipment that malfunctioned, communication that failed, scenarios designed to push them past their comfort and past their training into the raw space where they had to improvise. because the Navy had learned through catastrophe that a pilot who had never been truly rattled would be rattled at the worst possible moment. What is the modern equivalent of Seneca's practice? It is the cold shower you take, not because it is pleasant, but because it is not. It is the difficult conversation you have, not because the timing is right, but because you have been avoiding it. It is the choice to carry the heavy thing when you could have lightened the load. It is fasting, it is training, it is sitting with boredom without reaching for your phone. These are not aesthetic choices, they are functional. Every time you choose the harder option when the easier one was available, you are building a specific kind of strength. The strength of knowing, in your bones, that you can handle more than comfort has allowed you to discover. And that knowledge changes how you move through the world. You stop being afraid of loss because you have already practiced living without. You stop being afraid of failure because you have already practiced discomfort. Epictetus said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." This is not resignation. This is the product of a man who has tested himself against reality enough times to trust that he can meet it. Do the voluntary hard thing before life makes it involuntary. Lesson 5. Virtue is not an opinion. It is the only currency that holds. In 399 BC, Socrates was given a choice. He had been convicted by the city of Athens, the city he loved, the civilization he had spent his entire life serving, on charges of corrupting the youth and impiety. The sentence was death. But his friends and students had arranged his escape. He could leave. He could live. He could simply walk out of the prison in the night and continue his life in exile. He refused. He drank the hemlock. He died in the city that killed him, because to live by escaping would have been to contradict everything he had taught. A man who preaches virtue cannot purchase his life with the abandonment of it. The Stoics built their entire philosophical system on a single claim: virtue is the only true good, not wealth. Crassus was the wealthiest man in Rome and died when melted gold was poured down his throat by his enemies. Not power. Caesar was assassinated by the men who called him friend. Not pleasure. Nero had every pleasure available to him and died at 30, hunted and despised, stabbing himself in the throat as his own guards abandoned him. What held? What proved itself across the full sweep of a life? Across the centuries of history the Stoics had to study. Character. The alignment between what you believe and what you do. The consistency of conduct when no one is watching and when it costs you something real. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome for 19 years. He had absolute power, the kind of power that, in every predecessor, had eventually produced corruption. He had advisors who told him what he wanted to hear. He had the ability to silence any critic. And yet, in his private journals, which he never intended anyone to read, the man he described was still trying, still failing, still holding himself accountable to standards that his position could have allowed him to abandon 1,000 times. This is what the Stoics mean by virtue. Not the performed virtue of social approval, not the virtue you display when someone is watching. The virtue that costs you something, the commitment that survives the moment when betraying it would have been easy, profitable, or safe. There is a reason why the Stoics said virtue is sufficient for happiness, not contributory to it, not helpful for it, but sufficient. Because a man who knows he has acted rightly cannot be truly broken by anything the world does to him afterward. His core account is full. Whereas a man who has accumulated every external good, wealth, status, recognition, but has spent his integrity to get there, lives in a kind of bankruptcy that no amount of success can correct. In 1940, Winston Churchill stood before a nation on the edge of collapse. France had fallen. The army had been rescued from the beaches of Dunkirk, but was shattered. America had not yet entered the war. Hitler controlled most of Europe. and Churchill's own cabinet was debating whether to negotiate peace. Churchill refused, not because he was certain of victory, but because he believed that there were things worse than defeat. There were positions from which no recovery was possible, and surrender was one of them. Virtue, even at catastrophic cost, was the only currency with any value in that moment. What are you trading your integrity for? How much does the compromise cost you, compounded across the years? The Stoics ask you to run that calculation honestly. Lesson 6. Time is the one thing you are always spending. Seneca began one of his most important letters with a sentence that lands differently the older you get. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. He was writing to a man named Paulinus, who was the prefect of grain supplies for Rome, an important bureaucrat, perpetually busy, perpetually overwhelmed with the administration of an empire. And Seneca's message to him was essentially, you are not busy. You are distracted. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. The Stoics were among the first thinkers in the Western tradition to treat time as a fundamentally moral issue. Not just a resource to be managed, but a trust to be honored, because time is the material from which your life is made. Not metaphorically, literally. Every hour you spend is an hour of your finite existence, given to whatever you have chosen to give it to. In the 1890s, a young Frederick Winslow Taylor began a series of experiments on factory floors in Pennsylvania that would change the way the entire world thought about work. He studied exactly how workers used their time, the movements, the pauses, the wasted motions. He found that the average worker spent enormous amounts of their working hours on activity that produced nothing. He called it waste. The efficiency movement he launched eventually transformed industrial civilization. But Taylor studied factory time. The Stoics studied lifetime. And their findings were, if anything, more disturbing. Seneca catalogued the ways in which people squander their hours, time given to pleasure without purpose, to worry without action, to busyness without meaning, to the pursuit of things they do not actually want, and to the avoidance of a reckoning with how they are actually living. He wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy." The Stoic practice around time is not merely planning or productivity, it is presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote about what he called the art of confining yourself to the present, not because the future is unimportant, but because the present is the only moment in which any action is actually possible. The future is speculation. The past is done. The present is where life is lived and where most people are not. The average person in the modern world spends hours per day consuming content designed not to enrich their lives, but to extend the time they spend consuming. They spend hours rehearsing conversations that will never happen and replaying experiences that cannot be changed. They spend enormous portions of their finite existence in a state of partial attention, partially present, partially somewhere else, fully committed to neither. The Stoics would call this a form of death that happens before dying. Seneca said, "Postpone nothing. Balance today's books. The person who has lived well is the one who can say, at any given moment, I have already received everything that this day had to offer, because I was here for all of it." Stop spending time on things you wouldn't choose if you remembered you were dying, because you are. Lesson 7. Negative visualization, the Stoic practice they never told you about. Before the invasion of Persia, Alexander the Great reportedly said to his advisors that his greatest fear was not the enemy. His greatest fear was that he might stop being afraid of losing. He understood something that the Stoics articulated into a full practice. The human mind adapts to abundance and becomes numb to it. What you have today, you take for granted tomorrow. What you fought for becomes invisible once it is secured. And the life you are living right now which contains almost certainly things that a previous version of you desperately wanted, has become ordinary to you, invisible, expected. The Stoic practice for this is called negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It is the deliberate, structured contemplation of loss, not as pessimism, not as morbid anxiety, as a tool for restoring the vividness of what you already have. Seneca practiced it constantly. He would sit with the question, what if this were taken from me? What if this person I love were gone? What if this work I have built were destroyed? What if this health I am relying on were not there tomorrow? And rather than producing despair, this practice produced something unexpected: gratitude. Acute, specific, real gratitude for the concrete things in his actual life. This is not what the modern world sells. The modern world sells the constant pursuit of more, upgrade, expand, accumulate, improve. And the implicit promise of this pursuit is that satisfaction lies just ahead, just past the next acquisition. The Stoics understood that this promise is structurally false. More does not produce contentment. More produces more wanting. The only circuit breaker in this loop is the practice of confronting what your life would be without what it contains. In 1975, a study was conducted on lottery winners and on people who had suffered severe accidents and become paraplegic. The researchers expected large differences in reported happiness. What they found confounded their assumptions. Within a year, both groups had returned to roughly the same baseline happiness they had reported before the event. The lottery winners were not substantially happier. The accident survivors were not substantially more miserable. The mind adapts. It resets. And it does so in both directions. This phenomenon is called hedonic adaptation. The Stoics did not have that term, but they had the practice designed to defeat it. By regularly imagining the loss of what you have, you interrupt the adaptation. You restore freshness to the familiar. You recover the perception of value that constant possession has eroded. Marcus Aurelius sat with the possibility that he would lose his wife, his children, his empire, his health, his life, not to create suffering, but to ensure that when he was with them, he was actually with them, not taking them for granted, not rushing past them towards some imagined future improvement, present, grateful, awake to what was actually there. Tonight, sit for 5 minutes with this. What if tomorrow you woke and this was gone? Whatever it is, the relationship, the health, the work, the city you live in, the people who are still alive. Not to frighten yourself, to see what you actually have clearly without the fog of familiarity. Lesson 8. The examined life and why most people choose ignorance. In 1961, Hannah Arendt was sent by The New Yorker to cover the trial of Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi bureaucrat responsible for the logistics of the Holocaust. She expected to encounter a monster, a fanatic, something that would explain through its obvious evil how such a catastrophe could have happened. What she found was a bureaucrat, a mediocre, ordinary man who had told himself, and told others, a series of comfortable stories about following orders, about his role being administrative, about not being personally responsible for what the machine he managed had produced. She called it the banality of evil. And the horror of her conclusion was this: the greatest atrocities are not committed by monsters who know they are monstrous. They are committed by ordinary people who have never examined themselves closely enough to understand what they are actually doing and why. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." He said this at his own trial moments before his death. He was given the option to stop examining, to simply live quietly, to stop asking questions, to leave the city in peace. He refused. Because to stop examining was, for him, to stop being alive in the only sense that mattered. The Stoics built daily self-examination into the structure of their lives. Epictetus required his students to review their conduct every single day. What did I do? Why did I do it? Did my actions align with my stated values? Where did I fail? What does that failure tell me about where my training is insufficient? Seneca described his own nightly practice. When the light is put out and my wife has at last fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by. Because the honest review of a day, done with genuine rigor, is one of the most productive acts a person can perform. It is the difference between experience and learning, between living days and accumulating wisdom from them. Most people avoid self-examination not because they are lazy. They avoid it because it is deeply, genuinely uncomfortable. The examined life requires that you encounter yourself honestly, your rationalizations, your failures, your contradictions between stated belief and actual behavior. It requires that you notice the gap between who you present yourself to be and who you actually are when it costs you something. This discomfort is exactly why it is necessary. The discomfort is the friction of truth against self-deception, and without regularly generating that friction, self-deception hardens into identity. You become what you were unwilling to examine. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, general, the most powerful man alive, wrote in his private journal that he was often a coward, that he often failed to act with the courage he knew was required, that he frequently allowed irritation when tranquility was the correct response. He did not write this for publication. He wrote it because the honest reckoning with his own failures was the only mechanism he had for not repeating them. The question is not, are you a good person? Almost everyone believes they are. The question is, have you looked closely enough to know? Lesson 9. The discipline of desire, wanting the right things. In 356 BC, on the night that Alexander the Great was born, the temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was burned to the ground by a man named Herostratus. He had no political motive, no religious grievance. He did it for one reason only. He wanted to be remembered. The city of Ephesus sentenced him to death and banned, on pain of death, anyone from ever speaking his name. Their intention was to erase him from history. But the very act of banning his name guaranteed that historians would record it. Herostratus achieved, through the worst possible means, exactly what he wanted: immortality. His story is a perfect case study in what the Stoics called the corruption of desire, the condition in which a person wants real things, but wants them so badly and through such distorted channels that the pursuit destroys them and everything around them. Epictetus taught that the source of all human suffering is not circumstance, it is desire misdirected. Specifically, desiring things that are not within your control, and therefore placing your peace in the hands of factors that have no obligation to cooperate with your wishes. He made a distinction that is worth sitting with, between desire and will. Desire is directed outward, at outcomes, at the responses of others, at results. Will is directed inward, at your own effort, your own character, your own response to what happens. The Stoics do not say, stop wanting. They say, want the right things. Want the things that your effort can actually secure. This has profound practical implications. When you desire an outcome, a promotion, a relationship, a level of recognition, and that outcome depends on factors outside your control, you have outsourced your peace. You have made your contentment conditional on the cooperation of the world, and the world is under no such obligation. The Stoic reorientation is to transfer the desire from the outcome to the quality of effort. Not, I will be happy when I succeed, but I will direct my full effort and act with integrity and be at peace with whatever results that produces. This is not indifference to outcomes. It is the recognition that outcomes are built from processes, and the only part of the process you fully own is your own conduct within it. In 1936, Jesse Owens traveled to Berlin to compete in the Olympic Games, the games that Hitler had designed as a demonstration of Aryan supremacy. Owens won 4 gold medals. He ran and jumped with a clarity and precision that no political program could match, because his desire was not for recognition or for revenge or for the validation of a watching world. His desire was to perform at his absolute limit. The result took care of itself. Check your desires, not whether they are ambitious. Ambition is fine. Check whether they are attached to outcomes you cannot control. Because the attachment is the suffering, not the wanting. The Stoics want you to want more. They want you to want the right things more precisely. Lesson 10. To live well is to prepare to die well, and to let that preparation change everything. In 65 AD, the Emperor Nero sent soldiers to the villa of Seneca with orders for his death. Seneca had been his tutor, his advisor, his mentor for years. It did not matter. Nero wanted him dead, and so dead he would be. The soldiers arrived. Seneca, who was elderly and ill, sat with his friends and his wife. He told them, "Do not weep. I am going where I have always known I was going." He dictated his final thoughts to scribes. He took the blade himself and opened his veins with a steadiness that his executioners reportedly found disturbing. He had spent his entire life preparing for that moment. Not in a morbid way. In the only way that preparation for death is actually possible, by learning to live without clinging, by practicing the loosening of the grip on things that were never fully yours to keep. The Stoics confronted death more directly than any other philosophical tradition in the ancient world, not because they were pessimists, because they understood that death is not the opposite of life. Death is the context in which life takes on its actual meaning. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This is not a death wish, it is a clarity tool. The awareness that your time is genuinely, measurably finite transforms the trivial back into the trivial and makes the essential impossible to ignore. There is a Zen story about a master who, when asked what happens after death, replied, "I don't know." The student said, "But you are a Zen master." And the master said, "Yes, but not a dead one." What the Stoics had, what Seneca had, bleeding to death in his bath, dictating philosophy to his scribes, was the lived integration of the awareness that this ends. And that integration had changed everything about how he had chosen to spend the time before it ended. Studies of people who have had near-death experiences report a consistent pattern. They return with radically altered priorities. Things that consumed them before, status, trivial conflicts, social comparisons, the accumulation of things, lose their gravity almost entirely. And things that were neglected, presence, depth, love, meaning, suddenly become the only things that matter. The Stoic practice asks you not to wait for that experience. It asks you to use the awareness you already have, that you will die, that everyone you love will die, that everything you have built will eventually be gone. And let that awareness operate on your daily choices right now. Not later, not when you are older, now. Because the people who learn to live with death in view do not live smaller lives, they live larger ones. They stop wasting time on things they do not actually